What I'll do is use this as a background colour because I've got most of it. Oh, this is quite nice, lovely texture. This is for my Aunt Marcella, who had a very long innings, was very active until the last 2 years of her life, when she got bronchopneumonia and broke her hip and had a bowel, had a hernia, umbilical hernia. And she died after quite a struggle in hospital. We had a difficult relationship. Close in some ways, but very distant in others. It's looking quite nice, actually. Let's try a symbolic piece of charcoal colour. Now I have to leave room for her name here, because in cremation you have to write the name of the deceased on the coffin, even if it's only in felt tip. So I have to leave that. I mean, she'd be quite intrigued by this. She'd say, why can't you just be normal like everyone else? But on the other hand, she would get a sort of kick out of it. In a way, we've got everything wrong. Marriages should be celebrated the way funerals are, and funerals should be celebrated the way marriages are. I think we've got it completely wrong. That death should be seen as a relief and as a union or reunion, but marriage should be seen as something which is very dangerous and difficult and not terribly ecological either. Now, what I'm going to do with the sides and what's this going to look like when it's all done. And the problem is, this coffin's 6'3" and my aunt is only about 5 feet. So we're going to have to pack it. So the idea is to pack it with pillows and her teddy bears and things that she collected over the years. I can't really cope with ministers of religion because I find that you cannot be anything like that without being a hypocrite. All religion is hypocrisy. And especially Christians, because most people who call themselves Christians are quite the opposite of what Jesus was. He was anti-institution. He was a tramp, itinerant, let's say, very anti-institutions, very anti-family. Anti-state, anti-money. So Christians are practically by definition hypocritical. She would love the idea of a cardboard coffin. But she wouldn't actually talk about details of funerals. She would just say she would like a nice cheap funeral, but once I said, well, would you like your coffin to be cardboard or polystyrene or whatever, she just didn't want to talk about it. Oh, we've got lovely drips this side. That actually looks quite nice. Certainly bizarre. Right, I'll do the other side. I had to pick her up from the hospital mortuary, and I phoned them up this morning. They wanted to know if I wanted her mouth closed. I said, well, not really. If she died with her mouth open, leave her mouth open. I don't see any point in interfering with the dead. That's why I don't like this embalming business. You doll them all up, and it's totally grotesque.
Morning, Anthony Weir. Yes, sir. Your mother here.
Oh, yes, right.
Yes.
Right. We'll do it soon. So I can't open this.
This is already.
Ah, that's wonderful.
leave this out?
Yes, just leave it.
Yeah. I have my...
Marcella Weir.
That's right.
It's just as proof that, unfortunately, this is natural.
That's all right.
Okay, sir.
No.
Now, you want to take the top of the body? I'll just slide her over.
About the sheets.
I just...
Oh,
just-
without the sheet.
Yeah, just without the sheets. Okay. Okay.
No. That's fine.
You want the pillow up here or
That's to chop the feet, actually. I thought she would be.
That's no problem.
Now we cover. And Mark, if you would go and get the teddies from the boot.
Yes.
He's only the one. And Just, these are going to hold her rather well, actually. And that one can go there.
That one, no, because it's flatter.
Let's see, when I remove them when we try and get the lid on. There's no reason why the one shouldn't be like that. Ah, the lid. I don't think we need anything more in. Brilliant. Bring it back. No, I think we're okay. I'm going to ask you a favour. It's a very unusual one. Could we borrow this trolley? I'll bring it back. Yeah, those tabs don't fit quite as...
Well, no, you just have
I think we may have done something wrong. Cremation Elegy for my Aunt Marcella. Winter earth and winter sky are far apart as you and I. Before and now, beyond the Kyrie eleison of the self-wrapped heart, we merge into the same invisible horizon.
I think it was very much what Girlie would have wanted, you know. Very simple and no flowers or ostentation, you know.
Most unusual, but nevertheless very, very appropriate and very solemn, I thought.
Anything else, the thought of chopping down trees and wasting good wood and for nothing, she would have approved 100% and more.
Anthony tends to think things should be quite bright and gay.
Oh, yes.
And Skirley would have been a bit sort of...
Oh, would that have been Anthony's choice?
Oh, he painted it.
Oh, he painted it? Oh,
Yes,
so
oh yes, he
you were
painted it
ever.
himself, yes,
It wasn't
Yeah.
the colour I was worried about. It was the texture. I thought I was afraid it would be rather fragile, and I hoped it would stay together.
Well, I was a wee bit dubious about the idea of the coffin, and I must say I would rather have the more conventional way of doing it.
Would?
Yes, I would.
Uh-huh.
She loved babies, but never had one of her own. She'd have made a good nun, but with the wrong religion. Her happiest time was for a few interwar years in London, but her mother prevailed on her to come back to stultifying Belfast when war broke out in 1939. She hated her boring, badly paid clerical work and poor conditions. She was the most intelligent, and the only artistic member of her tribe, but nobody saw it, or if they did, they squashed it. She was always restless, and even the day before she died, looking literally like an Auschwitz victim, she wanted to be up and out. And when she died, she still had all her teeth.
I have known her for 20 years, and in my experience, she's been a happy person.
Very
I would have
happy.
described
Yeah, I
her
must
as
say
a
I was
happy
very
person.
surprised at the tone of Malcolm's little talk.
Anthony.
Or Anthony's little talk, quite honestly, because we've been neighbours of Marcella for over 20 years, and I must say she was
She never
generally a
gave any
very happy
indication.
person, and it's certainly, as Maurice says, never give any indication of any unhappiness in her life.
Stand there, that's fine. Carol? That's nice. Makes a nice little group. Right there, that's it. That's okay. Just keep it going. Right. Yes.
Personally,
I-
I missed the religious part
I
of it,
did
actually.
too. I did
know.
too. Now I think prayer.
I
you
was
know,
conscious of the fact that
That
God
it was
wasn't
cold,
mentioned, for
cold.
example, you know.
in that sense, you know.
But however, you know, it was what I
And
think Marcella
I
wanted.
think, well, you know, if it was what you wanted, but I think, although you say Girlie wasn't into religion, Girlie did believe in God and
Oh,
did,
yes, she did. That's right.
you know, and I
uh-huh.
think she would have liked him mentioned, you know.
Yeah, none of these are from Marcella House. There's no flower. Very ghastly. God. She would have hated those.
Okay.
Do you want to know how much the whole occasion cost?
Right.
You wouldn't believe how cheap this was. £160. More shortbread for that? More drink? That cost about 25.
And I have a
yeah.
doll at home that she dressed for my grandchildren to play with in the house. She did all the knitting for them.
Then they were at the mortuary this morning. The mortuary was really, really interesting. I didn't have Girlie touched, so she was as she died. Her eyes open, her mouth open. And I was a bit terrified. I had a big slug of whiskey before this happened.
Maybe that's what you staying in the car.
Oh, I had to take this bottle out just before I went up to the podium and give it to Martin. Okay, I'll see you, or I'll hear from you.
Right, what we'll do first is just... Where's that? Yeah, put that red on the towel.
Sitting on the shelf of self, well below the ceiling of feeling, nervous of the bareness of awareness, I hang upon the breath of death.
When bodies come into the mortuary, they often look surprised, shocked, sometimes frightened, but they're never as you'd want to see somebody. You can always make an improvement.